What an honor this is to be in this room, this virtual room, the day that we're in with all the head coaches in the Washington, D.C. area. This is a very unique opportunity. I'm very honored and excited to be a part of this, and we hope that you gentlemen are as well. Not many chances to be able to be in the same room and have conversations with each other. So we're looking forward to kind of seeing your paths along the way and kind of the leadership roles that you take and distinct personalities that you have as you're leading your franchises in the right direction. And Coach Rivera, since you're the newest to town, we're going to kind of start with you a little bit here. First opportunity to meet your peers in the area.
Well, it's pretty cool. The thing that's kind of daunting is, they've all won championships recently. So, most certainly is going to put us under the gun a little bit.
Thibault, any tips for him on that one? I mean, you're the most recent to be able to have that. We're still waiting on your parade, by the way.
Yeah, we're going to be waiting for a while, unfortunately, with everything that's going on in our world. I have no tips. I got a chance. I lived in Chicago at one time when Ron was playing, so I got it. In fact, my wife still doesn't speak to me sometimes. I think about going to one of the coldest games she's ever been to in Chicago, and I couldn't get her to go back with me very often until it warmed up. So, no, just welcome to DC. I think you have a passionate fan base, and it's gonna be fun to see what you're doing to reshape it. Looks like a lot of good things have happened already.
Well, it's been interesting, when first coming here and really just kind of getting connected to the fan base. I do remember having played here, how boisterous these fans are. So I'm excited about getting these the fans behind us.
We understand that the fans in this area, they're passionate, they're hungry. And for the longest time when I first came here, many people told me, look, you're going to a city that's been cursed a little bit. Now they call them the District of Champions. So Reirden kind of Coach Reirden, let me go to you a little bit. I mean, you're part of that big Stanley Cup run. Is that still, I think you see the fan base kind of changing and kind of welcoming really and excited for the winning.
Yeah, I think that, you look back on the situation a couple of years ago when we were able to raise the Stanley Cup over our heads. I think it started something around town. So obviously the success that between the Nationals and Coach Thibault's Mystics and, really turning the corner here in terms of winning championships. And I think it's becoming a phenomenal sports city. It's been fun to be a part of. And I think that the whole atmosphere, instead of, oh no, what's going to go wrong now, is like, how can we win again? And that's really changed, I think, with the fan base, and it's fun to be a part of, that's for sure.
Yeah, and Coach Brooks, you've been here quite a few years. You know what it's like, to come from a winning organization and trying to turn it around as well.
I was just thinking the pressure's on Ron and I. We're the only ones that we haven't won a championship in a while. He won one as a player. I won as a player. I lost in the finals as a coach, but this is a great town, great city. Welcome to the city. It's great. It's going to be a good opportunity for all of us to continue to grow our sports, our fans, and just like I said, it's a great place to live and coach.
Yeah, I find the pulse of the district and the area, they're very anxious to get behind their teams and to kind of have something to break outside of this. And I think the biggest thing in life is everybody wants a little bit of hope. And we know, especially during times of trials, that sports teams and following your favorite team really offer you that hope. And each team has a certain amount of hope around them for the direction that you're leading your franchises. We can sit here and we can go over titles. Each of you have had your fair share of success, have had your fair share of titles, have had your fair share of being acknowledged as coaches of the year and winning coaches within your sport. Kind of just getting to that point though, I'm curious, when does it start, the goal of becoming a head coach, the reality that you are the head coach, and then the realization that you can become a winning head coach? And Rivera, let's go back to you for this one.
Julie, it's interesting because when I first became a head coach, my first 2 seasons, we had a lot of downs, but at the end of each season, we got real strong. So going into my second season, again, got down to the stretch, won 5 out of our last 6, really to finish on a positive. So going into the 2013 season, it's interesting because I was on vacation in July, and just before the season started, training camp, and I had a dream about winning a championship. And it's funny because when I woke up and my first thought was, I have not had that dream in 2 years. In other words, my first 2 seasons, I didn't dream about winning. It's crazy, but my third year going into it, I dreamed about, lo and behold, we won the division for the first time in like 9 years. So there was still something to it, but the realization that, we can be pretty good, it really hit me pretty good too.
Coach Brooks, when you took over as interim head coach, the challenge is just kind of taking over in that role. And also, I mean, talk about early success. You had a lot of early success in the role.
Well, we had a lot of talent. I took over like every assistant coach. You don't want to take over in the middle of the season. That means that your head coach got fired. PJ Carlissimo was the head coach. Luckily for me, he guided me. He helped me. And when he got fired, he stayed in town for 2 or 3 weeks. We were having dinners and great conversations. But I knew that we had a lot of good talent, that all I had to do was just go in there and continue to work and empower and get the guys better and form this winning mentality. And I think that's what we did.
Coach Reirden, kind of following up off of that, of taking over, as an assistant to the head coach. I mean, you were an assistant with the team that won the Stanley Cup playoffs or champions, and then you take over. Are there challenges within staying in the same team, taking that role on?
Yeah, I think there definitely are challenges, and especially taking over for a Stanley Cup winning coach. Obviously, Barry Trotz did a phenomenal job. And usually when you're becoming a head coach, it's because something has gone wrong or something has not worked out for your team. So going into it, I knew what I signed up for. It was going to be tough to match what Coach Trotz had done. But really, I worked hard. My family had sacrificed, and to put ourselves in a situation to one day become one of 31 head coaches, obviously a dream come true. And to be able to do it in the spot that I had spent the prior 5 years in was remarkable for me, and players that I knew, that we won together, and I was excited for the opportunity. And we had a strong regular season and kind of ran out of gas as we got going there, but certainly amazing opportunity, and looking forward to getting back at it here as we get into a playoff type of format here when things get going again.
Yeah, and Coach Thibault, you were talking about, look, you haven't had any losses lately.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I my path is a little bit different because I wasn't a great player. I was that average high school player, and my intent all along was just to be a high school coach and teach and do all that. And then all of a sudden, I was in college as an assistant, and then I was in the NBA as an assistant at 29. So I wasn't really looking as I was going along to be that head coach. And I actually learned how to be a head coach, I think, in a different way that prepared me for the WNBA. I coached in Omaha, Nebraska in what was the CBA, which is now the G League. And Scotty is well familiar with, that kind of level of play and knows what it's like to try to develop players who want to get to the NBA. And that became my learning lab. I got to try things. We didn't have, big, huge crowds. We had, 3,000, 4,000 a night, which actually in that league was pretty good. But, I was learning how to coach without the pressure of being in front of the big time. And so when I went back to the NBA, I had a better appreciation for the head coach's job, and I think I was a better assistant because of it. And then, I made the decision to come into the WNBA, and I felt all those other things had prepared me. And so, the first time it was a rude awakening, but I think, coming to the WNBA, I had a lot more confidence in what I was doing, and I felt I knew who I was as a coach a lot better.
And now the winningest coach of the WNBA, mind you.
Because I'm old.
I wasn't going to go there on that one, but look, you don't get to a certain amount of success with a certain amount of experience as well. Each of you kind of in that answer has mentioned somebody that kind of helped guide you along the way, as we know that nobody gets anywhere in life without the right mentors, the right advice, and the right opportunities. Coach Rivera, what would you say is some of the best advice that you have been given, and where did it come from? Is it typically in sport, or does that matter?
It really doesn't matter where you get the good advice from, but a lot of the really good advice I've got has come from within the sport. Everybody from Mike Ditka to Andy Reid have all given me great advice and great words of encouragement. But probably the person that really helped me the most and really got me going in the right direction was I had reached out to John Madden after my second season and ended up spending a lot of time with Coach and had an opportunity to really sit down and visit and talk with him. And one of the things that he gave me, a great piece of advice really, was about delegating authority. He says, you can delegate the authority all you want, but at the end of the day, did you set the standard? Did you tell them, okay, hey, you're in charge of this, but it has to be to this level? And it's interesting because it really opened my eyes up because, as a head coach, you do delegate a lot to your three different coordinators. And you really, my expertise supposedly is defense. So I didn't really intervene as much on the offensive or special team side. And initially, that's where we were our weakest at certain points. And so I really kind of started spending a little bit more time, had my eye over the coordinator's shoulders just a little bit more. And I think that really helped me in terms of getting to really understand what it meant to be the head coach, to be in charge.
Coach Brooks, I've heard you preach the same defense. And I know Coach Reirden, you also led your teams with defense as well. But Coach Brooks, is it? Can you find similarities from the NFL to the NBA for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think defense wins championships. You have to obviously be able to score, but you got to be able to stop the guys from scoring. And I think it's important, like Coach said, you have to be able to do it all. And, just going back to the guys that helped me, some of my former head coaches I still talk to that have been really helped me along the way. But I think it's important to always have mentors and talk to people not only in your sport but outside your sport. I think you can help. There's a lot of correlations with the sports, and we have a good opportunity for all of us to get together and kind of pick each other's brain apart and help each other move the program forward.
Okay, so let me just follow up for that before we move on. Where would you go with that? Picking somebody's brain. What would you ask in this room and in this setting?
Well, I think it's important. Like, how do you motivate your players? There's a lot of ways to motivate players, and how do you motivate your hockey team? How do you motivate the football team? Because if you have a motivated team, you have your best chance of winning. Obviously, you need your talent, you need your strategy, but you need motivated players. And it's crazy that you have to say this. I mean, other sports may be a little different. I'm not sure, but basketball, you have to get your team to be motivated night in and night out to give yourself a chance to win. And surprisingly, at times, players aren't as motivated as you would like them to be. So you have to be able to turn that switch on, and hopefully it's on more times than not.
Coach Reirden, you have a team that has the expectation of making the postseason, of winning the Stanley Cup, of superstars on that team. And yet there were stretches through the season where you go through losing streaks. I've heard you talk about challenging in ways, and the only way you can really find success in the team is being able to unlock their potential and being able to relate to them in order to motivate. Is it different for you?
Obviously expectations are different for every team and where you're at in the process. But obviously we're in the business of winning, and especially here with the Capitals, we know our window is closing here for chances to win a championship as our team continues to get older here. I thought the real challenge for me coming in and taking over, the defending champion was to be able to relate to that and find different strategies. And I did reach outside of hockey for those answers. I obviously knew many people that had won in the past. I was part of a team in Pittsburgh prior that had won a Stanley Cup, but where I went for my answers is I went to Coach Madden in Major League Baseball with the Cubs and got together with him in the summer and met with people in the NBA, met with people in the NFL, both defending championship teams, to see how they could motivate their team and keep them going, especially during that season right after winning. So I definitely sought advice from them, ways that they'd had success, not had success, and really look forward to picking the brains of the coaches that are on this call today as we continue to get closer to playing and get back going and just taking in everything the experiences that they have, because I think that that's where you can really get creative within your own sport, is bring in some of the things that they've done to have success. And certainly we're doing that right now in the DC area, and it's fun to be a part of.
Okay, Coach Thibault, your turn. The best advice you've been given and can give.
I was given a lot of good advice. I mean, I was very fortunate as a young coach, both as a high school coach and a college coach, to be around Coach Wooden quite a bit. And what I was taught more than anything else, at the end of the day, you win by going back to fundamentals. And he harped on that. And Scotty can tell you, Coach Wooden, he started practice the first day every year, doing the same thing basically he had done for 20 years. And it was back to the basic ABCs of the game. And so I think, that I don't ever lose sight that you have to stay true to your foundation. I think the second best advice I had to learn and was given was, don't try to be somebody else. You got to be yourself. You can steal from other people. You can learn from other people. And I've worked for a lot of really good head coaches, but I think that players see through things really quickly. And I think that they have to know that you're genuine with them. You don't have to be their best friend, but they've got to trust you, especially when like it's on the line, that you're going to be steady and dependable for them, that you'll tell them the truth. They might not always want to hear the truth, but you're going to tell them the truth, because I think that's how you get the most out of people. You know, people talk about whether players want to be coached or not want to be coached. The great players want to be coached because they have such a motivation to be looked at as the best in their profession. And so I actually think they're easier to coach than some of the ones who don't have quite a grasp of who they are as a player. And so I think that being truthful, being respect, and then the last part of it would be to include your players in a lot of the decision-making process. I think that they have to own it. I don't think you ever have a great team until your best players have ownership of the team. And those are the things I've kind of hung my hat on.
So when it comes to that, I mean, if I were to put up a list of all the superstars that each of you have coached, I mean, it would be pages long, even just in this era. John Wall, Bradley Beal, Alex Ovechkin, Coach Rivera for you coming in, the Cam Newtons and all that, and Elena Delle Donnes. The challenge, though, is taking that talent. And Coach Brooks, you said, you know, some of the early success was because of the talent that you had. But you still have to go out there and find ways to bring those superstar personalities, to get the best out of them, and to put it into one unit and one team. Coach Brooks, what's the challenge of taking those superstars and putting them into one significant message?
Well, it's a great challenge, but it's a challenge. I look at it and say, man, we got a good team. John's been out for a while, but he's going to come back next season, and the challenge. But I think when you have superstar players, you have to form a relationship with them and have them have a good understanding that you need your teammates to help you become even better of a superstar. And I've always believed in good role players. If you can make them superstars in their roles, and I think the star players and the coaches can do that and allow that to happen, that makes the star players even better, and that makes your team better, I think. But I think when you have a star players that have a good understanding that they need their teams, and we've all saw The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and how great he was, and then you started really, it clicked for him when he started utilizing the pass and making sure everybody else got touches, and he's obviously going to take over games. But when you have good players and star players, when they understand that, your team has a chance to be special.
Is that as easy in the NFL, Coach Rivera?
It is. It really is. Mike said something earlier that I really appreciated, and that was he said basically about they have to own it. They have to own it. They have to take ownership. And that was one of the things that I learned from Mike Ditka was, when you constantly talk to your players about taking ownership, and then you watch your star players take ownership of the team, that's very gratifying. It really is. And in 2015, when we had our Super Bowl run, the year we were 15-1, we lost in the Super Bowl. But during that run, a lot of things happened where the players took ownership. They took leads of the organization, and that was really kind of a cool thing for me as a head coach to see happen. Right in the middle, right at the beginning of training camp, I lose my older brother to cancer, and I have to go to the funeral. And as I'm getting ready to leave, four of my 6 captains came to me and said, "Hey, look, you go, you be with your family. Don't worry about it. We got this." And when I got back, the praise that those guys got from everybody else was amazing. They had taken ownership of the organization, took ownership of the team when I wasn't there, and it carried on that year. And so when you get when you can get your big time guys to do that, to really put it on their shoulders, it takes a lot of pressure off of you as the head coach. And I think that was very beneficial for us that their teammates saw these guys stepping up, putting their necks out on the line, and it really meant something to them. So that was really cool for me to see.
Coach Reirden, is it that easy to get the trust of the players, though?
You know what, I think I want to build on something that Coach Thibault said, and I think trust from players, it comes from honesty. And as a player, I was fortunate enough to play for a coach by the name of Joel Quenneville, who is the second winningest coach in the NHL history. And what he taught me as a player, and I didn't always like to hear it, but it was honest evaluation of my game. And some days there were some pretty long drives back to my apartment. I may have even shed a tear after some of the things he'd said to me, but at least I knew where I stood. And it allowed me to focus on what I needed to do to improve. And I'd rather know that and be told that instead of, given half truths and fake information to make me happier or try to drive me. So I thought something that was really important was my approach with all the players is what they get from me. They may not always like it, but they're going to know exactly where they stand. When they do something well, they're going to be told that as in addition. And to me, that's a huge part of gaining the trust of the players. And building again on Coach Thibault is that you cannot fake genuineness to these players and passion and the desire. They know whether you're trying to make them better, trying to make our team better. They know whether you're all in or not. They can see right through you. And I think that it's best to wear your passion on your sleeve and show up with a great game plan that involves everybody, involves your full team, because none of us are winning without having a team in our sports. So Alex Ovechkin is a phenomenal player, maybe go down as the best goal scorer ever, which I think he will. But we needed our whole team to help us win that championship. And to me, it goes back to building that trust and integrity within your group.
So Coach Thibault, is that natural? Is that something that you automatically have as a coach, or is that something that kind of becomes learned as you go through the ups and downs?
I think you have a little bit of it in you, and I think the rest of it is your life experience and who you learn from and who you watch. I don't think you do a good job as a coach by copying somebody, but I think you take what you like from people that are good things. I grew up, playing in the Bobby Knight era, but I'm so far from being Bobby Knight that it would have been the worst thing I could have done to try to emulate how he coached. I could learn things he did as a coach, technically, or, drills or whatever. But I couldn't be him, and I didn't want to be. I couldn't be, Coach Wooden was my mentor, but I'm not his personality. So I think a lot of it is growth, and I think a lot of it is just over a course of time, you just grow up as a person in life, and then you grow up as a coach by learning. And I think the last part of that is to never think you're done learning. And I think that's the other way you become a better coach is I'm going to be 70 this year, and I'm still taking notes from other people. I watch other sports. Todd can tell you I came to Caps practices occasionally, and I tried to learn something that they did, whether it was a fast break drill or how they said things to their players. I love going to football practices because I think they have a different kind of workday than we do. And I don't think our players understand the kind of workday that football does. So I think it's a constant growth thing for me.
I don't think they had the load management, right?
Exactly.
Coach, you mentioned John Wood, and it just gave me some great memories. I remember middle of my career, like in the middle of the 90s, I knew that I wanted to get into coaching, so I had a meeting with John Wooden, and it was like the most surreal experience I've ever had. Yep. It was like a biblical figure. It was like John Wooden. You've heard so much about the fundamentals, so much about the pyramid, so much about the first thing he taught his players how to tie his shoes and put the shoes on so it wouldn't cause blisters. But I just remember one word that he really just stood out. He said honesty. You want to be a good coach, be honest with your players. And some of the tough conversations that I've had with players, or some of the tough conversations that the coaches had with me, the honesty was so important. And sometimes, like Todd said, sometimes you kind of like you want a little bit of a half truth. Then the reason why you didn't play because you couldn't guard anybody and you didn't make any good passing decisions. I'm like, but you want honesty, and I think that helps. That helps players gain your players' trust.
We've had the opportunity to kind of get to know most of you as head coaches and kind of the style that you have, and to hear how your players talk about you. And Coach Rivera being new to town, we've talked to a lot of players on what to expect from you, a lot of the current players on what they already know to expect from you as you are taking over a team and trying to change the culture a little bit in that. Look, as every one of you have said, you don't get to be the head coach without there being some sort of change and transition and a certain amount of wanting to change the direction of the team. You now have to change that culture, and a big part of that is everything that we're talking about right here. What do you find is the biggest challenge in coming in and trying to get that message from the direction it was going in order to establishing the culture that you want?
Well, it's really to get everybody to buy in, more so than anything else. when I first got in and I talked with some of the veteran players that were already on the roster, I talked about what my vision was, what my goals are, what my expectations were going to be, and what they can expect from us. That was part of it too. When I had my first team meeting, I had to do it by Zoom. So I had everybody on, and I told them exactly what my expectations were of them. And then I flipped it and told them what they can expect from us. And I think, telling them, hey, it's not just about you, but it's about what you can expect from us. I think that helped a little bit, because I really, now all of a sudden they now know what they can expect from us as well. And I think that's just as important. And I think that goes back to the whole honesty part of it too, because again, and John Madden told me this, and he said, Ron, the toughest thing you'll ever do is tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. He said, if you can do that and do that consistently, they'll buy in.
Coach Reirden, did you find it the same? I mean, you came in again, we touched on just a little bit, but you found it as coming into a team that had established winning. And so how much changing do you really need to do in that franchise?
Yeah, I think, that was a bit of the interesting part of the challenge of taking over for, on a defending championship team in whatever sport it is. And I think it's, at that point I had to change a little bit of how I was and gradually do it. My role as an assistant coach was, I was really put in a position to succeed from Coach Trotz. He gave me a lot of responsibility, delegated a number of things to me. And my strength was being able to form bonds with the players to be able to get the most out of them. As I moved away from that and into becoming a head coach, now you have to distance yourself a little bit from that. You have to put somebody that was in my role someone had to take my role, and you had to allow them to grow and get better in those situations. So I think, for me, really with the length of the season, the most important thing for me, and building on what Coach Rivera said there, is for me, for my players and for my staff, I want to create an environment where people enjoy coming to work. We have a ton of fun. Our staff, our players, they enjoy coming to work because they know they have an opportunity to get better. And in the same breath, they're held accountable to a certain standard of performance. And I think that's something that I've seen change over the last 5-6 years in Washington. And it really started from our practices. And we ended up really deciding and making a decision that if we wanted to make the next step, we were going to practice with a purpose. And a lot went into that, but I think those were huge parts of how our team was able to have the success, and obviously how we've been able to win 5 Metro titles here in a row. So we've been really doing that, and it's been created by having a really good foundation of people and a good mission statement like I talked about a minute ago.
Coach Thibault, we all want to know how much time you came and took over a Mystics team that had 5 and 6 win seasons and made it to the playoffs, won it all. How much time does this culture change thing take?
Oh boy. I think it's a little bit in what you inherit and what you can establish right away. I think Ron said it really well that, he in his very first call told them, what he expected, what they would expect from him. It was bleak here when I came. I mean, 5 and 29 or whatever it was is tough to see. But what we did is we spent the first year just figuring out who bought in. I mean, and, I didn't have any other way to go about it other than here's what we're going to do. Are you on or are you off the train? And so we spent the first year evaluating, teaching what we were going to do, see who could buy in, and it got us to the playoffs. But there was a ceiling on that team. And so I think, all of us can talk about how we do things as coaches, but at the end of the day, how many good players do you have? And are they good players or great players? You need great players to win a championship. You don't need just good. The Mystics had a bunch of players who were good basketball players, but you need greatness. And greatness comes in form of talent. It comes in form of leadership. It comes in form of effort. And so we spent the first year doing that and then started weeding it out. And the other part of it, it's a business. I mean, I hate to say it, in that way, but it's a business. So you have to look as a GM and a coach, which players have value and what are they more valuable to your team or to somebody else's team? And so, it sounds like you're dealing chips, on the stock market, but that's part of the business part of sports. And so we had to say, okay, this is a pretty good player, but can we get better down the road? And so it's a series of things that builds on one another. So you change the culture and how you work, you change the culture and how you treat each other, you change the culture and all of those things, but you still have to add talent. So we went out and started the search for players that had all of those, and it took time. And when we finally got to the point where we were a good team, but we needed the one more step, we fell into a situation where we had a bunch of injuries and we had a season, the only season we haven't made the playoffs, but that turned into the chips that got us Elena Delagon. And it's amazing what a player like that does. You know, you're a genius all of a sudden as a coach when you get one of those players. Geez, guys, he's doing a great job. Well, I got the best players now. And that makes a big difference too.
Coach Brooks, I felt like every week we had to have a new roster with you the last season with how many changes and players were brought in and out, and you're trying to find that basis, that consistent, those players that can take you there. I mean, is your situation, and do you feel like your experiences were the same or different from what you just heard?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had our share of injuries. I've never been on a team where the NBA gives you two injury exception players, and we had a 16th and a 17th man on our roster, and they started for us. But one of the constants that we have and we talked about is the culture is just playing hard. No matter who's in the lineup, who's not playing, we can't worry about that. We just got to go out there and compete every day. And you do it in practice, and that will translate and transfer over to the games. And I think that's what we did, and that's what we're building. We're a young team, we're an exciting team, and like I said earlier, we can't wait to get back because we got all this good young talent. And if John comes back next year, we can be back to where we want to be.
Okay, so we're talking about players, having the right players, which means, and we've even kind of talked about overcoming, some struggles as well, which means at one point you have to release players, or you yourself have been released, or you're taking over somebody that's been released. So it's all about basically how do you handle adversity? How do you handle the failure? How do you handle the disappointment? Coach Reirden, I'm going to come to you to start this one, because when I was looking back over things, you played on 19 teams. Which is pretty outstanding, even including my hometown, the Jacksonville Lizard Kings. It was my very first introduction into ice hockey growing up in Florida. But 19 teams, what is it like having to experience that, to keep the hope, the faith, to keep believing in yourself, and even now as that transitions to the players on your roster?
Yeah, I've been in a lot of conversations and meetings with coaches being told that I was going to be released, traded, or called up, sent down, a number of things. So I've got that experience for sure in my back pocket. So that's been something that's been an easy transition for me into being a coach. But you know what, when I look back on those teams and climbing the ladder and, my path and my plan for, getting to the NHL as a player is I wasn't going to stop until I finally got there. And I had to start in, as you referenced, in Jacksonville, playing for the Lizard Kings and the Tallahassee Tiger Sharks, and making not enough money to really take care of yourself, a couple $100 a week, but I was playing because I love playing, and I wasn't going to stop until I could look myself in the mirror and said I did all I could do to try to become an NHL player. And obviously I got some fortunate breaks and some luck along the way and was able to get to the top. So that was a pretty amazing accomplishment and dream come true for me and for my family. But I've been able to, look back on those experiences, and now there's pretty much, there's no player that I can't relate to on our team. I've been on, I was fortunate enough to be on excellent teams as a player and some poor teams as a player. I've been fortunate enough to be coach good players and coach players that are just barely getting to the league. So it's something where I can relate to every player. But again, how I'm going to relate to them is by telling them the truth. And I think that if I look back on the times that I was sent down to the minors or getting traded or released or whatever it was, it comes back to telling the truth. And I want players to when I'm done talking to them, that they say that at least he gave me the straight up. He gave me the true scoop. At least I'm going to respect what he told me, even though he's telling me right now that I'm getting sent down or I'm getting traded, that at least at the end of the day, it was straight up and it was the truth. The one thing that I'll tell you that I have learned and over the years is when you are sending a player down or you are trading a player, after you've given them that news, you might as well forget about what you say after that, because they're not going to listen from that point on, because everything is going through their brains. And that one I can attest to is that when you're told this horrible news, all of a sudden your mind starts going in so many different directions that you don't even take it. You don't even remember what he said. So it's best to keep it short, be honest, and at least at the end of the day, they can stare you in the eye and they'll respect you as a person.
Coach Rivera, you're going to be making a lot of those decisions as well coming into DC with the authority as the coach and over the roster. But even yourself just getting that first head coaching job, I mean, I know you went through quite a few interviews before Carolina did hire you, before you did get that yes, and then you become the winningest coach in Carolina. You take them to a Super Bowl, you take them to the postseason, and new ownership comes in and says, okay, thank you so much for your time. See you later. It works out for the Washington Redskins. But how do you personally, as a head coach, and throughout looking back on your career, kind of handle those disappointments?
You know, it's funny because when he let me go, my first thought is, okay, where am I going next? You know, I'll be honest, as soon as he did that, I was done. I was through. I moved on. A lot of people found that hard to believe, but I really, truly did. I started thinking about what my next opportunity would be. And what was interesting about it was 5 days later, I heard from Daniel Snyder. And, you know, I hadn't got to that point, you know, that I was talking to somebody, but all of a sudden there he was. And that happened one other time when I was in Chicago. You know, we go to the Super Bowl, losing the Super Bowl, and they don't redo my contract. And so it was, okay, it wasn't what was me. It was, okay, where am I going next? What's my next plan of action? And I was unemployed for all of about 30 minutes. So I was always looking and trying to get to the next spot. I don't think I ever really took a step back and really said to myself, you know, what am I going to do? I always kind of had an idea that, okay, let's go on, let's move on. Let's don't sit around and feel sorry for yourself. And, you know, and that's pretty much how I felt about it, was that I wanted to get back in as quick as I could.
Coach Brooks, I saw you shaking your head yes a little bit in that. Although when you were released after 5 postseasons with the Thunder, the one time you didn't make it, they said, okay, thank you very much. But you decided to take a year off personally with your family. But I saw you shaking your head on, and maybe this is just the mentality of a head coach. Look, that's yesterday's news.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's all part of the game. You know, if you're going to get fired, the best part about my firing, I still had a year on my contract, so I got paid for the year. But really, it's hard. It's hard to get fired. But my high school coach was like a father figure to me. He's always told me 2 important words: you can be better or bitter. And you know, you can't worry about, you know, they didn't want you. They thought you didn't do a good enough job, so they let you go. You can't be bitter about that. You got to move on and be better from it and learn from it and grow from it. And that's what I felt I did in Oklahoma. I mean, I've been cut as a player. I've been traded at halftime as a player. That's just all part of the game. It's not an easy part of the game, but you got to deal with that. It's called life, and you got to be able to pick yourself up and move on to the next thing.
So, Coach Thibault, what would you do differently?
I don't know that there's much I would do differently. Maybe try to be smarter sooner, not be so hard-headed about some things. I think that's part of it. You know, I mean, it's interesting that we have, you know, several coaches on here who are very successful coaches, and yet we've all been through that part. You know, we've all been told you're hired to be fired. I mean, I got fired in Connecticut after we had the second best record in the league. And my attitude was similar to what Ron just said. Okay, and Scotty, because I said, okay, they got to pay me for a year. I can take a sabbatical, but let's see what's there. And same thing, got a call, you know, shortly. And I was like over it. I mean, my wife was worried about it. We cleaned out my desk in like, I don't know, 3 hours. And I was out the door and she said, are you okay? And I said, I'm good, because some new opportunity is going to be there that I'll get excited about. And I'm going to bring this same energy to somebody else. And my attitude was, you made a mistake, Connecticut. Okay, we're moving on. And I think, you know, I think it helped me that I'd been an assistant and watched guys I worked for as head coaches do similar things. And I think I learned from that, you know, life goes on. You're still going to take care of your family. You're going to feed your kids. And, you know, that's all part of it. You know, the family life is a big part of all this and how everybody's in this together. And your family sometimes feels the pain a lot more than you do as the coach. You're already on to the next thing. They got to read about it in the paper or have somebody say something. You know, I think you just have to be, if you're confident that you're doing the right things and that how you're going about things is, then stay confident. And then look back and be reflective and say, okay, what can I change? What can I do a little bit better? Can I have been better in this circumstance? every opportunity and everything in this game is an opportunity to get better. And I think that's how you have to look at it.
All right, Coach Rivera, real quickly here. Coach Thibault was talking about, okay, basically go prove them. Go prove them wrong for releasing you. I mean, can you relate to that? Because we hear players all the time saying when they release, saying like, look, I'm going to make them pay for it. When they go up against their former team, they got a chip on their shoulder. They want to prove that, you made the wrong decision. Do you as coaches get that too?
I think so. I know for me personally, my whole thought process was exactly that. I mean, everything Mike said, I did. I cleaned out my office instantaneously. I mean, I was packed up and I was out. But the one thing I did, I went out with my head up. Okay, I had taken a team that was 2-14 at one point and took them to the Super Bowl. And I know my last year wasn't what I'd hoped it to been. We had some injuries, some situations, some circumstances. But at the end of the day, that was my whole attitude was, it's time to move on. And one thing he said also that I really liked was I was going to be excited about my next opportunity, which I am excited right now. I mean, I really, truly am. I'm looking forward for the opportunity to get back on the football field with our team, as soon as we can, we get the all go. So it's pretty exciting. And it is rejuvenating at times as well.
Coach Reirden, have you had those opportunities or those kind of experiences?
Yeah, I mean, you know what you come back to is I think all of us will say we have the best job in the world.
Yes.
No one, for sure, I don't want to trade places with anybody. But knowing that you sign up to get, you get hired to get fired. That's professional sports, and make no bones about it. It is a business, and that I can certainly tell you, you see firsthand. But I think that when I'm talking about the best job in the world, that in my specific situation, I have the opportunity to not only help players improve on the ice, but I also get a chance to mold them as people off the ice. And what amazing opportunity you have to make a difference in young people's lives. And sports happen to be our vehicle for doing that. And to me, that's an absolute luxury, and it's an honor to do it. And it's something that I never take a day off of. And it's my favorite part. My favorite part is improving somebody both on the ice and off the ice, and being able to have that genuine discussion, whether it's good or bad, with players, and helping them become dads. I've seen Alex Ovechkin go from, a single guy to being married to now he just had his second child. And I mean, how much he's changed as a person is phenomenal. I've in forming different plans and different ways for everyone to improve, and on the ice and off the ice that's the fun part. That's the best part, in forming those relationships with players where you both have something that you're working towards together. And we've been fortunate here in Washington with the Capitals to have success, and looking forward to having that success again here when we get the season going again. But wouldn't trade this job for anything right now.
So you're telling me you have no desire to try and coach the Redskins or the Mystics or the Wizards?
I think they're doing a great job. So no, thank you. I'm going to stay in my sport, but I can tell you that I can't wait to write down some things after this, because I'm always looking to learn. And I've learned a bunch in this conversation from everybody. And I'm just glad that you guys put this together for us today, because I've learned a lot. But regardless of the sport, everyone has their own area of specialization, but I think it always comes back to being genuine, hardworking, and honesty are things we've heard a lot about, and forming relationships with players to help them on and off the field or the ice.
Hey, Julie, I'm going to be the smart ass in all this. Yeah, Scotty probably knows. I worked for a guy named Kevin Lockery, a former Washington Bullet, and he always had, and it was kind of a throwaway line, but he always liked it. But there's some seriousness underneath it. He said, "What we do, just remember, it beats working and it beats not working. The fact that we get to go out every day and do what we love is an incredible experience. I mean, there's always going to be ups and downs. Everybody has it in every job that they have. But I look forward to getting up every day and going to work. And that's hard for everybody in this world to say. And so that part of it, I'll always have my appreciation for.
Todd, I was just going to mention, I disagree with you. We don't have the best job. It's the second best job. Playing is definitely the best.
Yes, you're right. You're right. I will second that. I'll take that back. Play as long as you can. That's my first piece of advice. So
forever.
Coach Rivera, come on, give us your thoughts in here. You ever think about, I mean, you have the task of the most players on your roster. You ever think of if you could just simplify that to 5 guys on the court at one time?
Oh gosh, yeah. I tell you, in all honesty, it's crazy because, when we've had to manage, we start the season with 90 during training camp. And by the time you're done, you're down to 53, 10 on the practice squad. So you got 63 guys that you have to manage. And sometimes it is a little difficult because of all the personalities. And it goes back to and you had asked, how long does it take to change a culture? We've got a lot of the military guys would come speak to our team and stuff like that. So I've had opportunities to sit down with command sergeant majors and colonels and generals, and they've all said the same thing. It takes 3 years to change a culture. And I said, 3 years, it takes that long? He says, well, it'll happen quickly, and you'll start to see the fruits of your labor very early. But that first year is really when a lot of things happen. And so as you go through this and you're managing, 63 guys, as you go through it, you really, the number who you really manage starts to go less and less as those guys start to buy into your culture. But yeah, it'd be nice every now and then to only have to worry about 5 at a time, I guess.
We're in this, and we're all in this meeting right here because we do have a passion. And someone once told me, it's like, when you have a passion for what you do, you're never really going to work, even though that it does have its doldrums. It has the things that you have to put up with that you don't enjoy, but it's not just a job. It's so much more than that. And again, I'm honored to be here in this room with you, and I understand the magnitude and the value of this, especially in today's temperature and culture in the situation that we're all in. I kind of want to ask you each and kind of go around from this. How do you stay physically and mentally healthy within your profession, the demands that it requires of you, and with the culture and the temperature that our society currently has right now? I'm just going to go around, and I'm going to let Coach Brooks, you lead the way.
Well, first of all, thank you for saying I'm physically fit. Sometimes I don't feel that way, but I think it's important. It's important to have balance. It's important to have balance not only with your own physical and mental, but with your family. You have to have this job is a grind. It takes a lot of time, and it keeps you away from things. But if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be your best version. And I always talk to our players about that. We have to have good balance. You got to have good relationships. You got to have good nutrition. You got to have good sleep. You got to be physically ready to play every practice and every day. And my coaches feel the same way. Coach Thibault will see me on the elliptical machine at a slow pace, but I'm on it. There's days I don't want to be on it, but I try to get an hour a day every day. But being fit is an important part of our job.
Coach Thibault?
Yeah, I'm finally getting back to the getting fit part. I kind of letting that slip for a while. So I decided when all of this pandemic started that I was going to make some use of this and come out of it better at the other end. So that's been interesting for me, learning to eat better again and work out more. But I think Scotty hit it right on the head. I think there's a balance to things with family and everything else. And it's a hard thing. I've talked to a lot of guys in Ron's profession and who, the work days are long. So how do you get your mind and your body away from it? It's difficult to do. And I think the couple things that I've done is, number one, I've tried to purposely set aside time for myself or my family, even if you have to schedule a little bit. I'm going to do this workout at a certain time of day. Make it an appointment like you would anything else, and say, this is my hour for doing this, or this is my time for doing that. I think part of it in today's society is being able to turn off your phone or not be looking at it every 5 minutes and seeing, where you are with things. I think it's hard to do. We're in such an instant information society that you get caught up in more things than you would have maybe 15, 20 years ago. But the flip side of that is it can shorten your job if you do it right. But I just think that you have to be able to step away. And then the last rule we have with our staff is you have to laugh every day. We have to have something, that you laugh about. And even if you have to kind of, make it up a little bit, because if you can't enjoy what you're doing, or if it just becomes a drag every day, it's not worth doing in many ways. So one of my rules is to try to find humor in life. And I think that's an important part of it.
Are you the joke teller then?
Sometimes they're not as good as some of the other ones. I probably steal from somebody else. every once in a while we make our players have the joke of the day too. I've even got fun, Todd, out of watching Alex's kids jokes of the day over this last couple months on Instagram. So they're stupid kids jokes, but there's something just to get a smile on your face in the midst of everything.
It cures a lot. Okay, Coach Reirden, for you, mentally and physically, how do you stay healthy and balanced?
Yeah, I think, for us and primarily, as a coach now, it's that mentally sharp. I think that's the biggest challenge. And I definitely like to spend some more time becoming more physically fit and intend to. But for me, my main focus is really on trying to make sure I stay sharp. The game moves so quickly, and coaching and making sure you're taking care of your matchups and doing everything that you need to do, that you have to be sharp. And you can, if you want to be sharp mentally, to be able to coach a game or to run a practice how you want to, you have to be able to shut your brain down from hockey for a while. And my vehicle for doing that is spending time at home. I go in, earlier, seems like every day to be able to get home earlier that day so I can have some time with my 17, 18-year-old son and spend some time making sure that I'm there for dinner whenever we are at home. And, I'm in a transition period for him. And obviously, as he's getting older and getting ready to go into his senior year of going off to college, that this will be some of my last chances to spend with him. So the last few years, I've really used that as a priority. And I've actually gone in earlier in the day and come home earlier so I could have some of that time around dinner time to help him with different things or talk to him about becoming an adult. So that's been where I've been able to kind of shut my mind off and continue to improve as a dad and even get better as a husband as well, to make sure that I'm there to go through the growing up of a teenager, which is never easy for those of you that have them, as you know. But mentally sharp is the key for me, and that's something you got to give yourself a break to be at your best mentally.
I don't have teenagers, but I'll say this. I think sometimes they always find their way back home. I went back to my parents at 30. So take me in. Okay, so Coach Rivera, you get to round this question out.
It's interesting, balance. All three guys talked about balance, and I wholeheartedly agree. I have a friend who's a sports psychologist, Dr. Kevin Elko, and I've worked with him since I was with Philadelphia when I was at my first full-time position with Andy Reid back in 1999. And one of the things that Dr. Elko always used to stress, and I really love it, and I tell my players this all the time, be where your feet are. Be where your feet are. If you're here at practice, be at practice. If you're in the game, be in the game. If you're at home, be at home with your family. So I've tried to keep that in mind. Every time I'm at home, I pretty much leave it. Well, not necessarily. My wife used to coach, okay? In fact, Stephanie was an assistant with the WNBA here with the Mystics. And so she's got a little bit of a feel for the game, for athletics. And so when I first come home, she gives me about 15 to 20 minutes to unload. And then when I'm done, she'll look at me and say, "Are you through?" And I say, "Yes, it's okay. Now be at home." So we've kind of got that down. But I love the saying, just be where your feet are.
This has been really, really a great opportunity. And again, I hope you gentlemen have found something out of this, if nothing else, introducing Coach Ron Rivera to the area as well and kind of getting you a little familiar with him and his style and who he is as a man. Is there anything that you would have you'd ask each other as we get to here and we get to wrap this up?
One of the
I got a question for.
If I could, the one thing I would love to ask these guys is, how do you get restarted? This is the first time I've had to restart. How do you get restarted?
Scotty, you go.
Well, I think, I had to do that myself, is just engage with the players. I think it's important to have relationships with the players. If you have a relationship, it's a relationship business. And if you get your players understanding and buying into what you do, and I'm sure they will, just like they did at your last job, and this team is ready. This team is ready to move on and move forward, and the fans are obviously looking forward to the new change. But relationships are important. You get your best players to do what you need them to do, and the other guys will follow. I remember talking with Magic Johnson years ago and asking him about when we had a really young team, and he said, "Coach, you're doing a heck of a job. We got the young guys; they're in the finals, But you know what? You're not going to be very good until your best players understand that they have to coach this team the way they need to be coached. And that's always kept with me. You know, your best players have to be able to hold the rest of the group accountable. Obviously with you, but I think that's always very important. But you're gonna do well, and everybody's looking forward to all the success you're about to have.
Thanks, Scott.
I mean, mine is a little bit different in that being older now, our players keep us young.
Yep.
And I think that's a great thing that we can draw upon from them, is that if we think back to, if we can, to what we were like at their age, I think that really helps us in a restart. You know, remember the things you went through at their age, thought-wise, socially, the pressures that are on them, the people they hear from. And it's worse now probably than it was for us, because there's so much more social media and everything else, and learn to deal with that and just tune out all the other noise. You know, there's everybody in the world has an opinion. And the bigger the city, the more opinions. And in this town, a lot of opinions. But I think, you know, back to being true to yourself, but let those players, they'll show you who you are, what they need from you. They'll teach us as we go. And I've tried to let my players teach me as best I can.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, you talked about it earlier, but the ownership, and I loved hearing your story about the captains of your team, obviously after having gone through a very difficult time in your life. But I think that the when you have those scenarios where you can put your star players, put your leaders in a position to lead, and now let them do it and give them space to do it, that's an outstanding quality right there that you've already experienced. You already have that under your belt in terms of something that's worked for you. And I think that it happens in so many different ways. You can't predict how it's going to come about. Obviously, you know, during a tragedy, that's what happened. But it's gonna happen maybe by something that happens in a fun way with your team that helps bring them together. But I think you've got to step back regardless of the situation, and the players have to take ownership. And that's something that I think I've seen here in my 6 years is that's helped with the changing of the culture, is that the ownership of our star and veteran players, at the end of the day, they're the ones that are out there playing, right? We can give them all the guidance we want, but they're the ones that are going to battle. And the sooner you can get them to take charge of your group, the better you're going to do.
Right on. Thanks, Todd.
Yeah. Can I ask a question now?
Go for it.
Like I'm still a little ways away from getting, you know, started with our team. And I think that we're not going to end up starting our training camp until maybe July 10th at the earliest. Any strategies you guys have used during this pandemic that you found have really worked out well for you guys? Well, whether it's Zoom calls or sending something out that you found really worked out well. I'd love to hear some advice so I can keep getting better this last month.
You know what's been cool is we've been doing the Zoom, our players have, and as the head coach, I just pop into the different meetings, and then what I do is I'll text each guy individually later that day, and say, hey, I thought that was a great question you had, or hey, I really appreciate your answer, you know. And it's funny because, you know, it's like, God, I didn't realize, you know, you were listening, Coach, and hey, really appreciate, thanks for pointing that out. I mean, just, you know, being there and then letting them know that you're there, I think it really helped. It's funny because now I get texts constantly from our guys. I don't know if you guys want all your guys, but, you know, I've got 90 guys that I respond.
I don't have that much time.
Yeah. Well, I try to break it up. I try to go into two or three meetings a day and listen and just watch the guys. And
that's great.
I've done that. So I've kind of told them, hey, you know, so they know that I'm watching and I'm taking interest in what they're trying to do.
That's really good.
I don't know, Scotty, you and I are doing some of the similar things in some ways with our players, are doing some workouts over Zoom calls with our strength coach or our assistant coach with ball handling, things like that. And we've had Zoom calls that have, you know, dealt with film issues. We're trying to get our players to be better film watchers, and how to learn, not just watch film as a fan, like, you know, learn, you know, what other people do on the court or things like that. But we've also changed it to some social things too. You know, one of our film sessions was just a discussion of The Last Dance. and each of the players took different parts of it and, talked about what themes came across. We've also done a team happy hour and do, end of the day, end of the week, 5 o'clock happy hour, and everybody could do whatever they're, drink at home, or if they didn't drink, something else, and just let it be a social thing rather than a basketball thing, and let them blow off steam. And, the first time we did, a lot of them hadn't talked to each other, as much. They all text each other, but they hadn't physically, had that contact with them in that regard. So that was fun. And I just thought that was different ways. We're giving them quizzes once in a while. Some are like trivia stuff, and just trying to mix up, but just keep the social engagement going with it too.
That's great.
Yeah, I think like Mike said, I mean, we've been say the ball handling and all the workouts we've been doing with our strength and conditioning coach, but we added a few other things. We do a weekly yoga session, and the guys love it. And then also we started a book club, and so some of the guys are participating in that, and I don't know if they've let me involved in that one, but I've heard it's very successful. We haven't done the happy hour yet, Mike. Maybe you can invite me on that one. I wouldn't mind going on that one. Can we keep it going during the season as well?
Yeah, no question. Coaches need it maybe more than the players once you get to the season.
I'm intrigued now. I'm an avid reader. What's this? Do we know the book that they're reading in the book club?
I don't know the book. They mentioned it to me. I think the first one was I'm not sure. I think it was the coach at Tennessee. Mike, you would know.
Pat Summitt's book?
Pat Summitt, yes. It was the Pat Summitt book.
I'm trying to think of the name of the title, but yeah.
I lost my train of thought. Yes, it was. I don't know the name of the book, but.
And Coach Thibault, in these happy hours, are you dancing? I know you're notorious for dancing.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there.
We've seen enough of those.
No, we don't need that. No, I'm not dancing.
Were there any other questions that anybody else wanted to kind of put out there as we're wrapping this up?
I have one question for Coach Ron. I think a lot of people around the country love Sweetness. He was one of my heroes growing up. Walter Payton, I just loved him. I just loved everything about him. He never, it seemed like he never took a play off. He seemed like he was always said the right things off the field. Is that who he really was? Or is it, sometimes we've been around it. Sometimes it's not really the truth, but he seems like that guy was always right on and off the field.
He really was, Scott. He was a tremendous man, a tremendous person. He was actually, I get drafted. They fly you out right away to meet the press and all that. So I fly into Chicago. They walk me into the locker room, and who's the first player I meet but Walter Payton? And we kind of strike up a bond. And he's actually the guy that helped get me into coaching. When I first retired, I was doing radio and TV like a lot of us think we can. And one day, Walter and I were on the sidelines. I was doing the pregame, halftime, postgame, and sideline reporting for Sports Channel Chicago at the time. And so Walter and I are standing there, and we're talking about the game. And I said, I think about this or think about it. He said, you really want to coach, don't you? I said, well, I'm thinking about it. He says, well, come see me. So I go sit down with Walter, and he and I start talking, and he says, you know what, I'm going to talk to the McCaskies, who owned the Bears at the time, still do. And he set it up, and that's how I got started. And but he really is, he's everything that you've ever heard or ever seen. He was phenomenal. He truly was a great teammate and just a good person. And he left us way too early. It was tragic.
Sure did.
I want to know if I can come watch practice, Ron. That's what I want to know. Absolutely. You all are welcome. Please feel free to, and please reach out. I have no issues. I think it's important because, again, it's an exchange of ideas, because I've done it. Coach Borrego in Carolina used to come watch. Steve, the one that's in Orlando, Steve Clifford, he would come on. Then I would talk to them afterwards and say, hey, what did you guys see? What did you guys think about this? And it's interesting because some of their questions that were asked, that they asked me, really led me to think about, maybe I need to think about doing this differently. So believe me, you guys are more than welcome, and don't be surprised because I'm going to ask you for some feedback because I think it's important. No, I really do, and I really do appreciate what you said earlier, Mike. Is that I'm taking notes over here. I'm still learning too. I want to try and know it's interesting because one of the things that got me interested, and I got to give Mr. Snyder credit for this, he had done a lot of research. And one of the things he said to me, he said is, I've done this research, and coaches that have had success early on in their career but didn't win the big one, the second time around wins the big one. And he said, and he's betting on Andy Reid. And lo and behold, a month later, I get the job a month later, Andy wins the Super Bowl. First thing he did was he picked up his phone, called me and said, see, what did I tell you? So that's, that's believe me, we're all hoping for.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd love the opportunity to come out to practice. And, I've done that in the past. And you learn so much from every other sport. For me, it's a great way to broaden your horizon on how to connect with players. I love watching football practices to be able to see how you guys manage. There's so much stuff going on with the different groups, and it's phenomenal to see how it's all put together and orchestrated. And so I will definitely be taking advantage of that opportunity, Coach Rivera. So thank you.
No, please
tell
do.
Your what, and Ron, tell your wife if she needs her basketball fix. I don't know where we're going to be playing this summer, but down the road, I come and challenge me and critique my team too.
I can tell you this right now. Both Scott and Todd, when I first got here, we were able to come out and see you guys play. And nothing personal, Todd, but during the hockey game, she was, Scott, during the basketball game, she was all over it.
Have her come out. I can use some help.
I love it. This has been fantastic. Love just kind of like being a fly on the wall a little bit, listening to y'all talk to each other and learn from each other and growing from each other. And I myself am sitting here thinking, like, I want to take so many notes as well. There's a lot of things that I think anybody in life, no matter what position they're in, no matter what state they're in, I think can relate and learn from this conversation. So we thank you all for your time. And again, welcome to the area, Coach Rivera. And we can't wait to see the Wizards back, to see hockey back, to see the WNBA have that parade and get their season up and going again. And as soon as practice starts, head coach Ron Rivera, I'm out there as well. I promise you. When we are allowed on the field, I can't wait to get back. Again, sports is something that offers hope. And in today's culture and in today's society, we need a lot of hope. So we're looking to each of you to provide that for the players and for the fan base in the area. Thank you so much for your time. Stay safe. And hopefully we will see you all in your respective sports on the sidelines soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, coaches, for sharing.